Life Unrehearsed, brought to you by Lianas Senior Transition Support, specialists in home care and senior residences.
Matt Delvecchio here, and if you were listening last week on Life Unrehearsed, we addressed the topic of aging in place. Most people do want to stay at home as long as they can, and we had two wonderful guests from Premier Home Care talking about what needs to happen at home if you want to stay at home as long as you can. On today's show, this will be addressed for those that may be considering a downsize or a transition. I wrote a piece in the Suburban last week. It was published about some of the trends going on in the senior living industry, and really had a lot of reaction, a lot of interest from people wanting to know a little bit more. And I just want to kind of summarize what I put in that article, which was discussing trends in senior living communities. I've visited over the last couple of months 20, 30, maybe even 40 senior living communities, or RPAs as they're known, Résidences Privées pour Aînés. That could be anything from independent living, assisted living, memory care, or even long-term care. And I had a lot of discussions with rental advisors just to get a feel for what's going on and what's trending in the industry, because, I've been asked on CJD to discuss some of the RPA closures recently. We've heard of King David and a couple of others. There's been a lot of closures in the last 4 or 5 years, and they tend to be some of the smaller ones. It's a tough go for many of the RPAs, particularly with a lot of costs going up from labor and food costs and insurance. So I was a little surprised to hear that the rental advisors at these senior living communities have been extremely busy, and even claiming that vacancy levels are reaching pre-pandemic levels. And so in questioning why the demand was going up, I think I could narrow it down to pretty well 4 topics and 4 issues, if you will. First of all, there's no doubt that there's some pent-up demand. The interest rates have gone up, 10 times since March 2022 to July 2023. A lot of older adults have been on the fence, not wanting to move during these interest rate spikes, and things have been settling down. Many folks have not been investing in big renovations, little touch-ups here and there. And now that the interest rates seem to have been stabilized, I think that's been a trigger point, if you will, for those that are considering, the burden of home ownership is becoming too much, and they're looking out there. I think another thing that I'm hearing a lot is additional care requirements are a big issue, especially as our population is aging, and you're holding on, and let's say you're waiting 2, 3, 4 years. Obviously, care is going to increase. It's only normal, and it could be little things like mobility, where the stairs are becoming a little bit more difficult to navigate, and maybe a little heavier care, or there might be some assistance from the CLSC and others, or for dressing and even bathing. There may be cognitive issues, right, where it's starting to add up a little bit more, forgetful, not paying the bills, or forgetting to pay some bills, and that's a concern for caregivers and families. So additional care requirements is a big reason why people are transitioning as well. And I would say 2 of the other ones, one of them being, and probably the one I hear the most, is social interaction, especially if it's an individual. Maybe you're alone at home. We certainly saw it during the pandemic, how social interaction, or lack thereof, played a significant role in our mental health and well-being. So I'm hearing a lot about, I'm in my own community. I have the best of both worlds. I have my condo type living, but I have access to services if I need them, and there's activities, and I can go to the ones that I choose. And the last one I would put on the list would be attractive promotions. Let's face it, these are companies, they're businesses, and they would like your business. And there's been some incredible promotions over the last few months that we've seen going on. So whether that's rent decreases or services that are being thrown in. And so it's been challenging for the industry, and they want your business. So don't be afraid to ask for any promotions and so on. I had a text just come in now. It's Matt Delvecchio here, and we're talking about trends in the senior living industry. Last week, we talked about aging in place, and this week, we're talking about the potential for considering a move. And one of the questions, and this text just came in, how can we convince our parents that it's time to move into an RPA? Probably a question I get at least once a day, and it's not easy. And all I can say to that is, try to plant some seeds, have these essential conversations earlier rather than later. Have the discussions with mom or dad, because it's only normal that they want to stay at home for as long as possible. They've worked hard their whole lives. Change is disruptive. Even moving from the house, it could be challenging and worrisome. What am I going to do with all this stuff? So this all comes into play. So it's always recommended to at least plant some seeds, have these conversations, and look for trigger events. Have you seen any trigger events? Has there been a hospitalization? Has there been a fall? Has there been something forgetful? And then you're bringing those up in the conversation. So never easy, and totally understand why folks want to stay at home as long as possible, but try to have those conversations earlier rather than later. So, those are some of the reasons why the senior living industry and these RPAs are really starting to get busy. And I would suggest that, going around to a couple of tours and check them out. Many agencies like our own at Lianas Senior Transition Support, and others as well. We're part of the ACHQ, Association des Conseillers d'Hébergement du Québec. And there's other agencies that these are free services that can narrow down the search, doing needs assessments. All right, I want to get to a couple of other texts here before we wrap it up. A very popular text that I get often, I want to address very quickly, is what is the difference between a power of attorney and a protection mandate? I get that a lot. In fact, we're going to be bringing on a notary in the next few weeks to talk about many topics such as wills and power of attorney and protection mandate. But this particular one is brought up all the time. And if I could just explain, a power of attorney, consider this as something while you are apt, but you need help in the interim. So a power of attorney is to name one or more people to act in your best interest, even though you are fully capable. You use a protection mandate to name one or more people to take care of you or manage your affairs if you become incapable of doing so yourself. Okay, so this is quite important, and a lot of people will think, do I need this or don't? It's absolutely worth it, and very often it's in the same document. Get that POA, power of attorney, written down, and get that protection mandate out there. Again, we talk about essential conversations. It's time to discuss those if you haven't had the discussion with your husband, your wife, your loved one, your parents. So it's a very common question. Don't assume that the power of attorney covers you for everything, especially if you become inapt. All right, there are still so many more texts that I do want to get to, and I will eventually. We have to wrap it up. However, one very, very important note here. And before I sign off, I would like to pay my respects to a wonderful lady named Karen Humes, who passed away a couple of weeks ago. Her funeral is today. She has touched hundreds, if not thousands, of children with special needs, and their families have benefited from Karen Humes. I quote from her obituary: Karen cared deeply about children in thought and deed, and dedicated her life to making a difference as a teacher at the Mackay Center for 42 years. Many families know Karen. God bless Karen. May you rest in peace. And I want to thank you personally, as you did help out our family for many, many years as well. You are the best, Karen. All right, thank you for tuning in to Life Unrehearsed. As a reminder, for all your inquiries or assistance with life transitions, home care, and the senior living industry, it'd be my pleasure to help. You can find out more if you look up Lianas Senior Transition Support. That's Lianas, Lianas, Senior Transition Support.